All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the DotPro with myself, BreakyCPK. Looking forward to another, what I'm sure is going to be a fun show ahead of us here. The Kiev Major officially wrapping up. In case you didn't hear, what a grand finals we had. OG takes out Virtus Pro. 3 games to 2 in the epic grand finals right there. A best of 5 going the distance. And it was just a great cherry on top to finish it all off. So we have plenty to talk about when it comes from that event. Not only about OG, but of course some other storylines throughout. But also the Post Major Shuffle has begun. As well, on top of that, the roster lock officially announced for May 24th, and that's causing some already transactions to be made, and I'm sure many, many more to come over these next couple of weeks here even with when it comes to some teams. So looking forward to discussing that as well as making announcements of that as well. And then, of course, there's plenty of other events going on. We'll take care of that in the competitive surge. Also, some guests on the show today. I'm going to be joined by iNsania later on, the newest member of NIP, replacing Synerin, as we mentioned last week. And speaking of roster shuffles right there, so excited to have him on later. And also, we'll be joined by my good buddy zzrock, who's actually going to be joining me now as we talk about the Kiev Major and wrapping things up. zzrock, how's it going, man?
I'm going fantastic. How are you, Breaky?
You're going fantastic. I'm going fantastic. You're moving along fantastically. No, I'm doing great myself. You know, as I talked about in that introduction there, we got plenty to talk about. I mean, there's not only this whole big event that just finished up, but more later on in the show we'll get to with all the roster shuffling. But the Kiev Major wrapping up, man. What a show that was.
I would say I can sum it up in very, very fantastic games, some huge upsets, but I really hate the format.
Oh God. Okay, so you're one of those guys. You know, let's now that you brought that up, let's just start with that. So
sure,
you're talking about the single elimination format here of the event. So what do you not like about single elimination?
See, the difference is I don't even necessarily mind single elimination. I think group stages and the way they set them up in this tournament are pointless. When you're doing a Swiss group stage, which I think is a great idea, you can't have it so all you're playing for is seeding, especially going into single elim, or you can lead to situations where teams get to their last game and then you can kind of figure out where they're going to slot in on the bracket, right? And in single elim, you're only playing half the bracket until the grand finals. So if you could lose a game and drop to the other half of the bracket or win a game and switch bracket sides, there's incentive to throw a game.
See, that argument, the idea that there's the incentive to throw a game, I just don't know if I'm as sold on that as that's been brought up. You know, okay, so I'll say I made a Twitter post right after the team secret, of course, got knocked out in the first round by SG Esports, and talking about the idea that as crappy, frankly, it was to see that, because I've made a point. I'm a fan of Team Secret, you know, KZU, especially my boy there on the team. Seeing them knocked out after going undefeated in the group stages and then be knocked out by this Brazilian team right here that no one expected to do anything. And that's that, you know, they're done. They only lost 2 games here at the Kiev Major and they're done. But I made a point that I wasn't going to let that deter me from the idea that single elimination is still a fun format and one that I enjoyed, frankly. And I think overall,
I can appreciate the format for that, for giving you those potentially huge upset wins. But the fact of the matter is, if a team bombs out in group stage, they should not be moving on to the single elim bracket. I can appreciate that it was cool. We got this huge upset. That was great to see. But then why did we play the group stage? If you were just going to do this, why didn't we just have a team of analysts seed the people and throw them in?
Well, in any format, I mean, you're going to have upsets no matter how you get there. I mean, yeah. I do see it. So what transition would you have rather seen then? So more of the bye
I would have rather
rounds,
just seen if you're bottom 8 on Swiss, you're knocked out. You're done. That was your trip. You didn't make top 8, and then top 8 go to a single elim playoff bracket. That would have been fine to me. Maybe you could have done an extra round of Swiss then if you wanted to cut those extra playoff games or something like that. I know their hesitation in doing that is the fact that any team that travels to the event or any spectator that travels to the event has a chance of not seeing their team play on the main stage. That's always been their big hesitation with cutting people in groups. But overall, it depends whether they're looking to go more on the spectator side or whether they're looking to make it competitive.
Yeah. No, I was going to bring that up, so I'm glad you did right there. Yeah, exactly. The idea that they're Valve has made it pretty clear. Yes, they're obviously they want these to be great competitions to truly find the best teams in the end, but at the same time, it is also a form of entertainment. And the only reason why SG Esports was there, obviously, was because, as I've always stressed, Valve wanted to get the South American region to be at a major event, and they gave them a spot as a result of that, and thus we had SG Esports, and it gave them the opportunity to then do what they did, obviously, and take advantage of said situation. But the idea that if they did cut those bottom 8 teams or bottom 4 teams or whatever, they're flowing all the way out there, spending all this money to make a point for them to get out here, and then all of a sudden they're not on these main stage matches, and that kind of defeats the purpose of what Valve really is, at least part of the goal of what they're putting on these events for, is definitely that marketing aspect. So I think that's kind of an answer to that, where you got to be careful with cutting the teams out of the group stages for that reason alone. But the other format idea that's been brought up is then the idea of single elimination, kind of, but it's more double elimination, but you have buys for, I guess, like the top 4 teams, or the top 8 teams even. So you could even kind of break it down that way. But only playing 3 series, in the case of like Secret and VP, actually, only had to play 3 different series in the group stages. I just don't know if I would have been comfortable giving them a buy just because they played 3 series and they happen to win those.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to keep every team in it, I think there's ways you could do it. Yes, you'd probably have to give them a first round bye, and then what you do would be make it so that I don't even know if you'd have to give them a first round bye. You'd probably just make it so that the bottom 8 have to do like a best of 1 play-in type thing against each other in the playoffs, where they basically play into their slot in the bracket. There's some other ways they could do it, but the fact of the matter is, with the way the tournament played out, and especially I think SG Esports beating Secret gives more credence to the fact that this type of group stage setup into a single elim format really doesn't give you the best competitive atmosphere.
Well, and I like to make the comparison to traditional sports. I know there's people out there that say, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. It's not esports," but frankly, I don't care. I think comparing it, at least in some senses, to traditional sports is important, at least to kind of give that comparison and give an idea of where things are at. And the obvious is that they play a regular season, whatever the sport may be. Basketball, for example, and later on in the season, yes, there's that argument that maybe games aren't as important or whatever. And so in the case like you're bringing up, and many do, that the group stages doesn't really mean anything, but why? That's essentially what it is, right? It's just a very condensed, quote unquote, regular season that leads into then this single elimination playoff stage, as traditional sports do. So why does it need to be so different for esports is what I keep going back to. Why? What if Secret won? What if Secret just ended up winning, going 2-0 over SG Esports? Would we be still having this same discussion, this debate here?
Yeah, because I had the debate before the playoffs even started with some people. I had reservations with this format in the beginning, and I think the biggest difference between this and regular sports is where the money lies for the players. Most players' primary source of income, aside from the top select teams, is going to come from these tournament prize pools. And what you do in group stage doesn't matter as much. If that's devalued and you're into the playoffs and all you got to do is win a best of 1 or a best of 3, and then you're doubling or tripling your prize money, that doesn't ring true to me, because if that's going to be your income source, I want it to be the most fair and reliable way to get that.
That is the one point that I definitely have trouble counter arguing, because you're right. You definitely are right when it comes to that. So again, that's what I guess I kind of have to remind myself as, and perhaps people that are big proponents of the single elimination format, is that as the entertainment factor goes, as a spectator, hell yeah, I love the idea of a single elimination. I love the idea of upsets, even in this case where it happened to be an upset of one of my favorite teams, of course. I still can appreciate what it does, but you're right. When these players, their income in a lot of ways is coming from the success of these big events, and a team like Secret, ultimately is knocked out in that first round, and arguing whether or not the group stage has really led them to a fair spot in that case. Should there be double elimination because of that, just for the safety net of at least they have that go back of, with all that money being on the line? I guess that's where I see there is a logic to it. Now, again, my perspective has always been, I like single elimination. I'm not diehard single elimination, though. If they were to announce TI7 is going to be double elimination, so be it. But I give props to Valve for at least trying it out and
Sure.
putting it on in these last couple of majors here and giving it a shot, to kind of see how perhaps the reactions are and to see how it all shapes up. But, kind of going further with this now, tying into something else I wanted to talk about, as we kind of already have been. SG Esports here. They're obviously one of the reasons why this yet again. Now I know a lot of people have been talking about it before this event, but it really even fueled the fire that much more with them beating Secret, of course, and hell, even taking a game off of EG in the next round. But beating Secret was the big thing because, like I said earlier, you had a team that only lost 2 games the whole tournament. Both of them happened to be the SG Esports, and they were out in 9th through 16th place. They went 6-2.
Yeah,
that does feel a little odd, but at the same time, SG Esports, what does that mean for South America and SG Esports and what they were able to do?
I mean, I'm going to be honest here. I don't think it means as much as some people are giving it credit for to South American esports as a whole or what it's doing to the scene. I think in all honesty, it's just the fact that none of these teams that are the more premium teams, the Secrets, the EGs, the VPs, have played against South American Dota before. They have their own very specific style of Dota, and there is a reason that teams like Complexity and Freedom and Onyx have beaten them consistently. And it just comes from a lack of experience on the Europeans and Chinese scenes part.
I was, because as you're saying, I've actually had the chance to cast not only SG Esports, but, Brazilian, South American scene in general, fair amount, being a newer caster on the scene and, the North American region, the South American regions. Some of these events, aren't covered as much. So looking for these B-tier casters like myself here. So I've been able to fill in and cast some of these games. And I'm with you. It's like nothing really stood out to me to believe that South America was actually going to do well at this event. And again, I still think you can make the argument they didn't necessarily do well, right? they only won
bombed
3
out in
games.
group stages. Okay, so let's go series by series here real quick.
4
In the Secret Series, where SG made the big upset, right? I was screaming at my monitor watching just the draft phase out of Puppy in those. Because Secret's big thing is they're a very refined, a very vision heavy map control style team. That's why we saw things like a lot of Wisp, a lot of Bounty Hunter, anything that could go get deep wards and kind of control the vision and control the map.
Yeah.
And against the Chinese teams that play a lot slower and want to just choke you out of the game, it works very well. You're gaining these huge benefits out of every deep ward you place. You dodge them on the map. You play this Secret style of gameplay, right? What we've all kind of known from them. South American esports is the polar opposite. I don't even know if they know what a ward is half the games. They get their level 6, they group as 5, and they just run at you until they win or lose.
Yeah.
And that's how they've always been. That's how Infamous was when they had their good run. That's how, even in Frankfurt, when they went there, same kind of concept. And Secret's draft was just so prepared to play the 50-minute, let's control the vision and just outplay them in the mind game. And then all of a sudden they were getting ran at by a Warlock Undying Sand King and didn't really know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So is it safe to say, in your mind, that it was a fluke even that SG Esports beats Team Secret and that would normally not happen? The way I said this to my friend is if they played a best of 100, if they just grinded 100 games against each other in the same format, Secret would probably lose the first couple. Then it would go to 50-50. And by the time they were at the 20th game, I don't think Secret dropped more than 1 game to 100. I really do think it's a thing of, it was just an extreme lack of experience playing against South America. They didn't know what to expect. And in reality, they just got totally punished by the different play style that they weren't used to playing against. Yeah. Again, SG Esports, they won there. And then, again, if you didn't hear, so I made an error earlier. I meant to say they won 4 games actually in total because they did even take a game off of Evil Geniuses in the next round. So I guess that's even also a kind of another case of, again, I don't think we're trying to suggest that this was they're a bad team by any means. They obviously, in a lot of ways, they deserve to be there because, hell, they got 8th, or I guess 5th through 8th place technically with the way they finished. So it definitely, it's hard to argue against that idea, but they took EG, to a third game even.
Yeah, the EG series actually showed some promise from them. The secret one I legitimately will write off as Puppy has never played against South American Dota, and he wasn't comfortable in what he was doing. EG, to some degree, still gets to use that same excuse. They haven't played much against it because they're not normally in the PD Cups and the smaller tournaments that go back and forth, but they've at least seen more of the replays. They know the players a little more from pubs. And honestly, SG should have won that. If they didn't group as 5 in the Roche pit in game 3 and then just lose off the back of getting AoE'd in the pit by Sumail there with the 4-man silence and coil.
Yeah,
I think Secret or SG probably wins that series.
Could be in the semifinals against OG. And then who knows what could happen, right? I mean, with that kind of momentum, as we saw at the Boston Major with that Phoenix.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that is kind of their gold star, right? I think the series against EG is the one you got to take as proving, does South America deserve a slot? And at this point, I guess I don't know. It is... I mean, if this keeps getting bigger as a scene, if this keeps growing and accelerating here, what I would like to see is 2 slots for NA South America, but your close qualifier is played on LAN. Okay. Because the argument the whole time was that having an America's qualifier was unfair to South America. Yes, they're playing with higher ping. It's a struggle. But if this gets to the point we could have them all play in, Cali or Texas or wherever, then that ping issue wouldn't be an issue. But I think the quality of the tier 2 scene, especially for North America, and the tier 1 scene of South America are very similar in their issues. They shuffle a lot. Once in a while, you'll get this gold team to just rise from the ashes. In this case, I mean, it was kind of Onyx in this and SG Esports. But next major, that'll probably be different.
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily like just giving a slot to a region for a qualifier because we don't know the strength of the regions a month ahead of time even.
With the success of SG Esports, whether or not, it was a bit of a fluke or whether or not it's just, deserving, it comes down to they did, obviously get to the quarterfinals. They even took a game off of EG. I think at the very least, we're going to see a South American qualifier because of this. Yeah. Whether or not they're deserving is definitely another debate to be had another time for sure. But I personally like the idea of seeing more global presence, honestly. Sure. coming from the Han background, of course, we for the longest time were restricted to just CIS, Europe, and North America, really. Eventually, we really brought in what was the Thailand scene, actually.
And then the only teams left were Southeast Asian.
Exactly. And now it's at a point now, obviously a lot of things have happened in between, but the point is, in the very beginning, they were bad. They were frankly bad. They looked awful. But as the years went on, couple years later, all of a sudden, okay, they're competing. Something's up here. Then within the third year of them being around, they're winning our big major event, and then now they're just dominating. Thailand is the go-to. I'm not saying that's going to be South America by any means. My point is it's good to have the global presence.
We've seen it in Dota as well. I mean, MVP Phoenix first came in from Korea in a Southeast Asian qualifier that we had. I think they maybe even had to play in the China qualifier to get through the first time. And once they came in, they kind of started getting some invites. They started doing everything. And now we've got them, Faceless, TNC. I mean, we have a viable T1 scene now out of Southeast Asia. So I agree with you. I think if they get more exposure, if they get more presence, they will build. I don't know how deep you want to dive into the South American scene's logistics, but there are some very large underlying issues going on in the scene. And if you want to dive into those, we can a little bit.
Yeah, what do you mean? I mean, we might as well. We're on the topic of SG Esports here and their success at the Kiev Major.
Right, so if you take Brazil's scene is kind of its own little subset, right? You have Brazil and Peru, and that's where almost every single Dota team comes out of. If you take WESG, that nationalistic tournament they ran, there was only one team not in those 2 regions. And if you look in the Brazilian scene, you have SG Esports, which is essentially your super team out of Brazil, right? But their sponsors aren't huge. Sneak peek, this was told to me the other day, Luminosity is looking at buying them. So that could get interesting. Okay. But then you have Midas Esports, which is basically Midas Club is an in-house league across multiple games they run in Brazil. And that's their more money team. That's the team that's overflowing with cash. The players are paid a good salary. And they were in that qualifier as well. And then in the Peru side, this is where we have our issues. You had the Elite Wolves team. The shining hope of South America a year or two ago. And then the big match fixing scandal came out. Then 5 players banned. Then the roster's not allowed to play. So the problem was Elite Wolves is basically owned by the guy that owns NVIDIA in South America. He's the CEO for NVIDIA South America. So he has a ton of money and wants to keep footing the bill for these players because he thinks they can make a good presence in other parts of the scene that wasn't Valve events. Well, now he finally decided that was not going to work. So that roster is gone. Elite Wolves just picked up a new one. So basically you have Elite Wolves, Infamous, and Not Today are the big 3 organizations in Peru. And there's zero loyalty amongst the players to an organization. Literally, you might have even been watching this. I was casting a PD series, and one of the Infamous players got mad at his teammates and drove over to the Not Today house mid-series and had to get convinced to play the game from one of their computers because he was going to just be done.
Wow.
Like the weirdest stuff happens in the scene, and the only 3 big pro organizations all live within 6 blocks of each other. So it's going to be a struggle. And I posted this on Reddit a couple times. The reason that I've struggled with giving South America a slot is because of the instability in their region and the fact that we don't know if they're going to produce one good team. Because if all that talent mixes amongst the teams, you kind of end up with this really subpar group of teams. Kind of like the old Infamous roster when it was falling apart. Not Today with Leo Style and them was struggling. And you didn't really have a team out of South America. SG Esports kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, yes, it's the big names from Brazil, but everyone expected the slot to go to Peru.
Yeah. I think Not Today was the favorites going into the...
by far. It was the dream team between Infamous and Not.
Oh, they didn't. They came up short, though. So that is interesting, though, to hear some background on the South American scene. Now, it's, again, is that fair to the players themselves that maybe there's that chaos to an extent as far as the organizations go? I don't know if that is. I think that's kind of the counter argument there. I guess what you're saying, though, perhaps it is on them, though, in the specific case of leaving mid-series. But
it's a struggle for these kids, too, because a lot of them are very young. I know Infamous is offlaner. He's 16. And he's living in the Infamous house. And down there, that's kind of what you have to do if you don't come from a wealthy family. Like Tomato gets a nice little break because his family does have things. He's able to play at his house. He's got a good computer and a decent internet connection. But for most of these kids, if they're not on a team, they're going to a LAN center to play. Mm-hmm. And when your life, your livelihood, your house, your food, and everything is based on the back of you playing this game, that's a scary position to be in.
Oh, yeah. That's pressure. That's definitely pressure. So, again, it goes back to, I believe, especially even if SG Esports didn't necessarily succeed big time at this event, even if they got 2-0'd by Secret in the first round, I still feel like this might be the beginning of Valve opening up a South American spot because let's be honest, there's a lot of money to be made in that region. There's a lot of players from that region. And that is this underlying goal, right?
We're seeing more and more events take place in Sao Paulo, Brazil, too. There's right now MSI for League of Legends is there. They had ESL Pro League for CSGO's grand finals were down there. I mean, there's just been event after event in Sao Paulo in the last year. And yeah, it is a huge growing market. So I almost think this was the test. SG Esports had some fans. They definitely made some after the Secret Series and especially for me, the EG Series. But this was the test. You give them another slot at TI and then you see how the fan base looks. Mm-hmm. Because now you've given them one tournament to make some fans, and then TI is an event that these people could feasibly go to or support, and then they'll be able to look at the analytics and look at the market and see how it does. And I think TI will be the real test for South America.
Yeah, and I think you got a good example of that somewhat in the Ad Phenom situation. You have them, obviously the hype was surrounding them after what they did at Boston, but you look at Post Boston and now even Kiev, as known as Mouse Sports in this event, they did not do nearly as well. They kind of flopped in a lot of ways. At this one.
Before we move on to any other topic, can we point out the taunts that Infamous or that SG spams like all game when they're playing, especially the Undying taunt? Because that is a staple of South America. Literally, the taunt button is bound to their movement button. So it is constant taunting the entire game. Or the basher drop was I know Purge literally said that's the dumbest something I've ever seen. And
entertainment factor, man.
Oh man, I snap posted on Reddit. I said, if that's the dumbest thing you've seen in Dota, you haven't watched enough South American Dota.
Got him.
But yeah, it was fun to see. But yeah, I mean, Adfinem's a great example. They made a huge run on Boston out of nowhere.
And then all of a sudden, not so good at this one again. So, all right, there's definitely another big topic to talk about when it comes to the Kiev Major, though. So, moving things along here, obviously, OG winning it all. Like, so we've been talking about, SG Sports and the good and bads in some ways of what they did, but now on OG, it's just all good, right? Like this team, this is their fourth major win, back-to-back majors now for their first time. I happened to pick them going into it, and I was right, so I'm just going to gloat about that real quickly to top it all off. I don't know. Who did you pick to win it all?
I am not going to lie to you. I didn't do a bracket.
Who would
in
you?
reality,
that's kind of weird now. But.
My own personal pre-group stage, I wanted to see an OG-EG final. And we got it in the semifinals, and it was actually really lackluster. OG just manhandled EG. But yeah. I would have said them. I mean, I know VP had a strong lineup going in, but I mean, in reality, OG has just looked dominant for so long.
Mm-hmm. They continued that here, and the grand finals was the big match, as a lot of people hoped for. Now, to be fair, OG, it wasn't an easy road to get there, as it definitely you would expect that. I mean, some good competition. Even in the first round, they had to go to a third game against obviously Team Random there, formerly Wings Gaming, of course, and then known as Team Random, and now no longer a team. We'll get to that later on, but they took them out 2-1. OG over Faceless, then 2-1. And that was another one where Faceless took the first game, and you're thinking to yourself, is Southeast Asia making a run here all of a sudden with Faceless?
Yeah, I mean, Faceless is such a strong roster. They seem like they all get along really well. Ever since the Blacks joined that roster, there are two people in the European scene that everyone's kind of always been hesitant to really call icons or like, and that's Kuro and Black. And it's because with every team they seem to be on breaks apart within a year. Like all five people end up saying we can't get along and they leave and whatever. But this seems like the roster that Black has finally clicked with. He's been with them almost a year now. They seem to have great synergy. They're putting up these huge games, huge series, and I'm really liking where they're at.
Did you get to watch the documentary with Black or the player profile? Yeah.
And I know Merlini said it, he had no idea. We've talked to Black numerous times. I've hung out with Black at a number of events, and he's always just the goofiest, most fun-loving guy and super down-to-earth and relaxed. But yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah. No, again, I've known him from way back in the Han days, and, he was definitely a bigger individual, no doubt. Obviously, that's one of the things over time. He lost a lot of weight, and I can say for 100% that I didn't know nothing about, what he showed off there in the player profile. So definitely an inspiration, though, obviously, for many out there. If you haven't watched it yet, guys, check it out. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. PGL did a great job with these player profiles and overall the production there for this event. Everything but then the way they closed the event. That's kind of a side topic. That was really
cringy. Yeah, that and the audio issues were probably the two big struggles in the event. Oh my gosh. The two little black marks on what otherwise was a fantastic event.
Yeah, overall, very, very good. A lot of work definitely went into it. But that final, it's like, I'm watching the grand finals with my wife, actually, and they just finished. I'm all like excited with, OG winning it all, watching them celebrate. And then they do this closeout video. I'm like, all right, cool. They're going to do like a hype video of the event to close it all off, like a lot of these events do. And then it's just, girl. Here's a girl. It's like, what's going on? Why are we closing with this?
Like, the saddest part is they could have made that a decently tasteful little, 30-second or minute segment sometime in the event to show. But to make that the capstone final trailer, it's just, it was so cringy.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, again, that's one of those, I don't know if you should look it up, because frankly it really wasn't
please
much.
Do. It's bad.
If you haven't watched it, maybe it'd be good just to get reference here. And now, to be fair, PGL, the boss man, I guess, he did actually make a public apology on Reddit here recently, saying that they might have messed up with that one as far as posting that with the end video. Like I said, it could have been fun content earlier in the event, if anything, as a break video, but to end it all was a little off. But anyways, about the end, talk about the grand finals, though. They kind of, no matter what, they could have played whatever, it would have been, these grand finals were just so epic. A 5-game grand finals, the first one we've had since TI3, mind you. That's a ways back, the Na'Vi Alliance matchup there. So And it lived up to the hype. Virtus Pro, the home team, OG, the defending champions. What a storyline, man.
Yeah, I mean, that was an insane final. And really, it was kind of no one versus the world for VP there. Not to say that his other teammates played poorly or anything, but he tried to put the team on his back so hard.
Yeah. He's a good player. There's no doubt in that. He's definitely one of the top mid players in the scene. And he looked good throughout. Ramses, I thought, also was very impressive on their side. I mean, obviously, again, as a team, they looked very good. But Ramses as a carry, what is he, 16, 17 years old? I think he turned 17 at this event or something like that. So another one of these young players that's just insanely good. But they came up short, man. That had to sting a little bit, being the home team especially.
Oh, my only interaction I've had with Ramses on a personal level was when we were in Shanghai. It was one of his first majors. It was the Shanghai Major last year. And he's running around the lounge saying, "Does anyone know where my keyboard went?" And no one has any idea. And this little kid's just like, "I can't find my keyboard." And turns out some Russian fan broke in and stole his keyboard.
Ouch.
And I like VP's lineup. They've got a ton of talent on it, and it seems like it's developing. We haven't had a strong, dominant CIS team that has kept it going since Navi's early years. So I'm really excited to see what they do with this.
I had them getting knocked out in the quarterfinals, by the way. I actually did not think VP was going to make, because I know they did well in the group stages, but looking at who they played and the way I watched a couple of their games, it still didn't feel like a team that was going to be this scary team in this event. So I actually had them losing to Digital Chaos in the quarterfinals. Obviously, that didn't even play out.
DC going all the way to the semis?
I took DC in the semis, baby, going up against IG.
Brave.
They looked good. They looked good.
But they're not internationally tested at all. I mean, you're talking about them going against VGJ first round. ROTK is a man of legend.
Yeah.
You're just a brave individual with those picks, sir.
I'm a North American bias right here.
You really are. Yeah.
Well, I was also the idea too that honestly China, just like the Boston Major, they flopped in a lot of ways. Outside of Invictus Gaming, they overall looked pretty poor across the board. So, but VGJ obviously did come through there. And even took VP to 3 games themselves. But yeah, another quick note on the finals, though. Again, so OG, 4-time major champions. However, they haven't won TI, so that's always kind of brought up, when people talk about this idea that is OG the best team that we've ever seen? 4 majors is a pretty big deal, and they're looking good doing it. But without TI, is it hard to claim that title, you think?
I think it depends on how you want to qualify best, right? It's really hard to try to break that down to a reasonable metric, because I think this is the first time we've seen a team have a dominant era like this, where they just are crushing for this long and adapting across multiple patches and doing everything like this. So I don't think necessarily TI is a black mark that they haven't managed to succeed there. If anything, I think... yes, I think I would probably call them the best team we've seen in Dota 2 ever. If you go all the way back through it, even though they haven't won a TI, you could say there were more dominant teams of an era. Alliance didn't drop a series for a long time during their TI run, their TI era. And anytime we come back to a split push, like multiple core style gameplay, that Alliance roster had done very well across the 5 years they were together. Mm-hmm. I think the argument's probably between OG and EG. Because, EG, same kind of concept. They've been around forever. They show this tenacity where across multiple patches, multiple metas, they'll still find huge wins in deep tournament runs. But then you just see them bomb out sometimes. I mean, the meme is they're always starting losers bracket if there is one.
My tough thing with EG, I guess, is that we're talking about, if we're talking about straight up esport organizations throughout history, then I think EG, you could argue, yes, probably the better, but they've had a lot of rosters with their success, I feel like.
They have, but they've never made full roster swaps. I can't think of a single time since 5 years ago where they've dropped all 5 players. It's always been 2, 2, 2, or 1. And they've made incremental switches, which to me, that shows that an organization is transitioning versus we're going to scrap this roster and go for something new.
Yeah. I mean, obviously with OG, not to say that they've had the same 5 by any means either. It's really Flying No-Tail is kind of that core, and things have been
I think that's the best duo in Dota 2. I think that is the most historic, the most storied, and hands-on the best duo in Dota 2.
Okay, so that's like another take on it then. Yeah, so you think the best duo of all time, those two. I think there was some stat in Haas he's always posting. They were up there as far as like the most wins together, I want to say.
Sure.
As a duo of players. I know Notel actually apparently got his 1,000 tournament victory, like tournament match victory.
Yeah, what was the stat? It was like 2 players in that game were both competing for the 1,000.
Or was it 100?
Something like that?
1,000 sounds like a lot, man. Maybe it was.
We need
100.
Statman back here.
Where's the
Haas? Where'd you go?
I'm actually searching on his Twitter right now, so I can just find it real quickly. But it might have, because God, 1,000 sounds like a lot. Have the top? No, there's this one here. Yeah, God, he's posted all these stats, man. This guy was just spamming stats during. Okay, with that win, BD Noto goes 17-2 as TB. Oh, that's not what I was looking for. Okay, yes, here we go. Flying No-Tail. The highest or the most wins? Hold on, what does this say? 750th. Okay, so they literally got their 750th win together by winning Game 5 of the Grand Finals right there. They've played 1,200 plus matches individually. So, yeah.
So that's their 750th win out of 1,200 matches. That's like a 60% win rate in competitive.
62.4%, yeah.
That's pretty nuts. Honestly, when you take the grand scheme of things and all the metas they've played in and all the years they've played, and I'm assuming that's just Dota 2. No-Tail's been around, they were both staples of the Han era as well. So these are guys that are very, very seasoned.
Who would you guess is second, by the way? As far as the most games played together.
As a duo?
As a duo.
Wow.
It's a tough question on the spot. Think a little more old school, though.
Yeah. China or CIS? Or neither?
Neither.
Okay, I got nothing then. Yeah.
Ake and Loda.
Oh, okay. From Alliance, yeah. Yeah,
1,160. They're about 1,163, so about 40 games less or so than No-Tail.
I was going to say, I figured it had to be somebody with Burning or someone with ROTK, but...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting stuff there, so... But the point is, I think that's a very almost easy argument to make at this point, especially. Yeah, as far as one of the most impressive duos, if not the most ever. Flying No-Tail there, so.
Yeah, and we'll have to see. I mean, this is, they had won a major going into last TI, but they weren't dominating in the same format, right? It wasn't this thrashing, because I think the one before last TI would have been Shanghai Major, in which they had a very tough series against Liquid to take it. And I mean, I'm curious to see how they do here. We've only got a few months till TI and plenty of tournaments in between.
Like I said, we're getting right into it. In fact, qualifiers have already begun for events. I know the Dream League, actually, as we're recording this, kicked off earlier today. So,
and then Zotac Masters is a week or two?
Yep. The qualifiers for that. Manila Masters a couple weeks out, 2 to 3 weeks out. So there's stuff happening quick. That's what I love about the scene, though, man. Yeah. And then also, one other thing I want to bring up about that Game 5 real quickly, in case you missed it, guys. Again, if you missed it, oh my God, you need to at least watch Game 5. But the draft, man, of both sides, to decide it all, game number 5, we saw Virtus Pro going Enchantress, a Lil playing as Enchantress there. And then OG going No-Tail Timbersaw on top of that with Troll in the hands of Anna in that middle lane. Like, what?
And I'm going to be fair, watching that game, I thought OG was dead in the water after the first 10 minutes.
Oh yeah.
I'm shocked that Timber has been performing as well as he has in the way he is, because you've got the Timbers of last TI, right? Where you had, most notably, Moo would just win the game off the back of that hero. And it's being played differently now. It's being played as this more conservative pressure versus I'm just going to blink in and insta-kill you.
Yeah.
And I was shocked. That was a hell of a game. Almost an hour long.
Yeah. There was one fight around I think it was around the Roshan pit or the Radiant Ancients, I want to say, where Treant, I think Jarek's playing the Treant there on OG, he got a 3 or 4 man Overgrowth off and just locked them down and allowed for Anna to kind of sit there with the whirling axes going around, and Timber saw the chakrams out, and they won that fight, and then that's what kind of jetted them forward. Because, earlier on, they were actually behind. And it
eventually hit the point where I just remember Anna is like beating on a tier 3, and they're just poking at him, but not quite ready to engage on VP's side. And then Anna just says, screw it, BKBs, goes melee for him and runs up and hits more buildings. Like, he doesn't even engage with the BKBs, just hitting towers.
It's very Loda style.
Yeah,
like he does that quite a bit. So OG again, the victor as the ultimate point right there, and deservingly so. But it had to sting again for Virtus Pro a little bit. Getting second place is nothing to be disappointed in by any means, especially what happened at Boston and going into this event. But they were so close, up 2-1 in the series. OG had to win the next 2 games to then win it all, but they did, and they are your Kiev Major champions. So that's what kind of rounded it out. As far as so you didn't fill out a did you even do predictions by chance, or you didn't bother with that?
Not in client. I mean, I'm in Skype groups with like Brax and PPD and a few of these other guys, and I've talked about this kind of stuff a lot, but I didn't do any of the official stuff. No.
Well, I got the easy ones. I won the easy ones. I got the hero with the highest last hit average and the most last hits in a game. Good old Naga Siren there. So that was
it was either going to be Naga or Elk. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So I got those 3 points, but everything else was wrong for me. I was way off on most of them. There was one that I was pretty pleased with myself because it was one that only 1.5% of other people selected, and that was for the hero with the highest win rate. I actually went with Slark, and he actually ended up in 5th place overall with an 80% win rate, or just over 80%. So I was pretty happy with that. The ultimate winner, though, was actually Axe, who had 90% win percentage up there. So is that surprising to you?
I mean, I think so. Offlane roles in drafts have always been odd because you end up with these premium offlaners. This most notably in this patch, it's been the LC. Like LC is the offlaner to get. And if you don't get one of the premium ones, the offlaners tend to become a very late pick in your draft, like 4th or 5th. And so I think some of the offlaners will have like statistically staggered win rates, because if you're only picking Axe when you know it's a good Axe game and you're picking him 4th or 5th, he's going to do very well. So am I surprised by it a little bit, because I think Axe is in a pretty bad spot overall, but we had a lot of very right-clicky, I mean, with the LCs and Troll made a pretty big resurgence in this tournament. Axe does very well into both of those. So I guess not super surprised, but I'm happy. I love seeing Axe in games.
All right, so there was that. As far as, again, all the other stuff I actually did pretty bad on, so I don't really want to talk too much about it. But I did pick the right team, and that's the one that really matters. So I got a lot of those tokens from that, I guess you could say. So that was nice. But everything else, not so good. Not so good with. I'm no Nahaz over here, so wonder how he did. But I haven't seen that yet. Yeah, we didn't really see much Meepo, man. I was disappointed in that. We never got to see the Abed Meepo. Yeah. Everyone banned it. They were smart. They did not pull the complexity.
He is hands down the best Meepo in the game. It's not even a question at this point. I feel like anyone that wants to dispute that or say it's No Tail or, Weeha or anyone else, that it just isn't at this point. Abed has shown he manages that hero in a way that no one else can. And it's awesome to watch. I would have loved to see it.
All right, so to kind of finish things up as far as all this discussion here on the Kiev Major wrapping up now, and figured to kind of make a little bit entertaining way to do it with a toss-up game, basically. This is a popular format of a talk show game called Toss-Up here. So I'm going to ask a toss-up question, and we'll both give our takes on it. I'll let you go first, and then give
We're both saying our answer and then giving our takes?
No, say your answer, give your take. We'll kind of form a discussion out of it, if anything. So... All right, so toss up for the first one. Which performance was more impressive? Ad Phenom at Boston or SG Esports at Kiev?
I'm going to say Ad Phenom. They had a harder run. I think they showed they won more series as they ran deeper, and their group stage wasn't a total and utter disaster. I think they showed that they were just a better team, and it was a more impressive performance.
And this might seem like a, playing the devil's advocate, but honestly, I think it was SG Esports as far as just more ultimately impressive. There's definitely ways to gauge what you see as more impressive, no doubt. And Being in Boston, I felt that hype. It was real. Like ad feedem and what they were doing, the fact they got all the way to the finals and even made it a very entertaining grand finals. That was fun to follow. It was fun to be a part of that. But I think at the same time, they were also expected to do decent at that event. You were one of these powerhouse European teams going into the event with the qualifying that they made happen. So I don't think them getting to the grand finals, although it was a surprise in a lot of ways, it wasn't like that surprising. It was just momentum. They were a fun and entertaining team to watch. SG Esports, on the other hand, no one expected them to do anything, including myself. I mean, outside of perhaps Brazil, I guess, but I'm sure they expected them to do very well, but I did not expect them to do anything at all. And the fact, and then here we start watching the group stages, and they beat OG off the bat. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, well, that game, it was a fluke because OG, I think they ran Arc Warden. They were doing some funky stuff in that game. Not to take away from SG, but sure enough, OG took care of business and won that. It's like, okay, maybe this is what we expected now. And then you see the results there. Again, and fluke or not, they take out Secret, and then on top of that, taking a game out of EG, as you even said, was perhaps even more impressive than that first matchup there. So I think as just far as overall the most impressive for the idea of the team going into it, I think SG Sports has to claim that there. So.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's whatever you want to call more impressive. To me, SG bombed out of the groups. They fluked their way into a win against Secret with the draw they had and the team they played. I mean, I think if they played DC, they get 2-0'd, and that's just over. But I mean, the EG series was an impressive series for sure.
Yeah, there was some unfortunate matchups on that note. Real quickly, in fact, I had the TNC. I guess the stat lady for them. I'm blanking on her name right now. Their coach even. Anyways, what's that?
For TNC? Oh no, Faceless is Winter.
No, not Winter. She used to be for Fnatic, actually. No, she was for TNC. Blanking on her name. Anyways, the point is, I was having a back and forth discussion with her on Twitter about like the whole format and everything, and she was mentioning how they got really crappy, unfortunate first round matchup because they had to play Faceless in the first round, and obviously Faceless, just like you're getting at with the DC was to play SG, Faceless is very familiar with TNC, and that clearly played a role in their matchup right there. So kind of unfortunate for the team TNC. Anyways, that's a sidetrack. The next toss-up here, we got which team is more likely to have a roster change? We got the roster changes happening here. Team Liquid or Thunderbirds? Not saying that they're going to have roster changes, but which team is more likely, you think?
You first on this one.
Me first. All right.
I'm still thinking.
Okay. I mean, this is definitely a tough one. I would say Thunderbirds simply because I feel like something's going on, right? With the whole dropping the Digital Chaos team just before the major. Not that they necessarily need dramatic changes, but it just feels like something's going to happen with this roster right here. Outside of that, I don't really have a good reason for it.
They didn't drop DC, right? DC dropped them.
I think it was they mutually agreed.
Question mark. Okay, going into this, I think I'll probably say Thunderbirds as well. I think there's a chance Liquid drops the roster itself, and they have to do something there. But Thunderbirds, if you look at it, Thunderbirds as a sponsor is a subset of some website called Esports Only. We don't know the backers. I don't know the situation. But you're dealing with players from all over the world that are in NA, and the only reason they were here was on the back of Suns fan and a very, very large bill, I guess, to foot their living expenses and everything here. When you have a team of this many international players, if they don't have a big organization behind them, I don't see them staying together. It's too much drama. It's too much expense. And when you're not winning, you always kind of want to go back to your home and see what your scene has nearby. So, yeah, I agree. I think Thunderbirds is more likely to have a swap.
Honestly, again, Team Liquid, I wouldn't be surprised at both these teams because Team Liquid at the same time, they've been disappointing, or they were disappointing somewhat at the Kiev. Now, they got to the quarterfinals, so it's not like that's a horrible run for them. But I know that there's been a lot of their fans that have been, not the happiest perhaps with this roster and how it's working out. It feels out of place, but I think that I'm going to expect that they stay together with that said, so we'll see how they do moving on here.
Yeah, we'll have to see. The best Liquid roster is still TI-13 with Fluff, Bulba, IX Mike, TC, and Korok. It was like the meme dream team.
We got the best picture from that too. Just IX Mike.
Oh yeah, Mike with the sunglasses. It's fantastic. Yeah,
that great mustache of his. All right, who would you rather have at mid? Mid one or no one? AKA the player for Virtus Pro.
Yeah. No, let's just put no one in.
Just nobody.
Who would I rather have on a team that I'm building up from ground up? No one for sure.
Yeah.
I think no one is a better player.
Yeah.
I think he is more explosive. He takes control of games. I think mid one, while not being bad, the entire roster of Secret and their entire playstyle and scrim strats are based around getting him big. You constantly have a support babysitting you mid. The other one's still rotating in to give you a tri-lane mid when you need it. We even saw their carry would rotate in to help him often, sometimes pre-6. I mean, I remember the Morphling gank mid where he just came in and waveformed. And I think no one is the better player, and he's dealing with a roster that isn't necessarily playing around him. So that'd be my choice for sure.
I'm going to be the other side here. I'm going to be mid one, and maybe this is the in the moment hype of sorts. Now, I know I can't get knocked out in the first round. It kind of takes away from it, but man, in the group stages, was he the most impressive player, the main reason they went 6-0, and he was just so fun to watch between his Shadow Fiend, between his Templar Assassin on top of that, and any player that randoms on his way to being the top MMR in the world, I think is going to get my vote when it comes to something like this. So
sure.
I know apparently he's no longer the top, like if he's been kind of, going up and down, but just hearing that, like, I didn't even know that. I don't think many people did. That's just insane. Like doing that high of a rating. And then we have our final one here, more of a take on the heroes themselves, but a couple of heroes that were really interesting to see, but what hero was more surprising to see succeed? Lycan or Windrunner? Both went 5 out of 6 games.
Windrunner, for sure. I think Lycan, before the nerfs, was beyond broken, and even post nerfs fits the way that the game needs to be played right now. We're seeing that he can apply pressure to lanes, and we're seeing a resilience in... Teams don't want to group up early to take towers because of the bonus armor that they gain. Lycan can apply a ton of pressure to a tower by himself, even at level 5, level 7. And Windrunner, I mean, even after this major, I would still contest as a garbage trash tier hero. But it was 5 and 6. Every team that picked it did extremely well, and it felt like high impact anytime it was picked. So I'd say the Windrunner was definitely more surprising for me.
Yeah, I guess this, the way the question's worded, I too would have to go with Windrunner, because just like you, I've always felt Lycan is actually a really strong hero, and coming over a lot of these similar heroes from, again, the Han to the Dota scene. Now, obviously Han has its form over there in War Beast, and I kind of just assumed it was like the same hero in a lot of ways, but then really like looking at Lycan, actually, I was kind of blown away by there's that whole nighttime aspect to the hero. Yeah,
how many howl saves did we see from Lycan when he was picked? I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah. Secret, I know, ran him a couple of times, I believe, in the group stages, and so a couple of those wins right there alone. But yeah, no, just the idea of taking advantage of that nighttime aspect. But even without nighttime, it's still overall a great skill set, and he was made to work by several teams. So yeah, Windrunner would have to be for me, because I guess I'm not maybe surprised that Lycan did so well here. So well, that's pretty much covers the toss up there. So thanks for playing. I win though. There always has to be a winner after a game. Yeah,
I feel like we need a moderator in here. We'll each give our answer and then argue it out, and then have a moderator give points.
Let them decide. Let the community decide. You let us know, guys. Send me a tweet or him a tweet, and let us know you think you won that. All right, though, but that's what we got, though, on the Kiev Major, and talking about it. Obviously, even got sidetracked there to an extent, but had some good discussions, I feel like. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that part. Now, by no means are things done just yet. Like I said, that things keep going, man, in the Dota 2 scene. So in a little bit here, we're going to be talking about the roster shuffles going on, and the potentials even going over basically all of what's to happen there. But before we do, going to be joined by our first guest coming up here, Keizu of Team Secret, going to be on the show. Excited to have him on. But zzrock, going to say bye to you for now. So thanks for joining.
Absolutely, it was fun.
All right. Well, I think that takes care of our coverage for the Kiev Major, at least. Now that's officially wrapped up. So, again, OG's the champions of the Kiev Major, but there's still a lot of stuff to talk about. As I mentioned, the roster shuffle situation, especially after these majors tend to happen. And we've already had plenty taking place, including one last week, as mentioned. NIP, their new 5th member, iNsania, announced, replacing Syndred. And actually, we're going to be joined by iNsania coming up next year on the shows, guys. So sit tight. We'll be right back after this break. Okay, guys. Now, I'm really excited for this one. I'm actually going to be joined by who I consider a buddy of mine. I've known him for a while. I'm joined by iNsania here, the newest member of NIP. iNsania, how's it going, man?
I'm doing good. How are you, Breaky? And I would definitely consider us buddies, dude.
All right. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to go all the way there, but, I'm glad that you can confirm that. So, buddies, it is. No, I'm happy to have you on, though. Of course, so we go way back with Han, obviously, from the years here, including even very recently, which was kind of surprising in some ways to see. You're the Han Tour champion as of recently here. So, congratulations on that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we were probably equally surprised that we qualified in the first place. But once we qualified, I think we actually really believed in ourselves and thought we could do it. Yeah.
It was fun to watch. But we're not here to talk about that. This is a Dota 2 podcast, after all. We're here to talk about it, but there's another reason I have you on. A significant reason, in fact, I think it's safe to say. As I stated, and in case you haven't heard, guys, the newest member of NIP, the NIP organization. What does that feel like, iNsania, to know that you're a new member of NIP?
It's awesome. The playing for NIP is really cool, and always representing an awesome name like them is really nice. But for me, the roster and the players on this team, it's actually an honor to play with them and learn from them and try to be able to become the player that they need.
Now, for those that, again, you're not brand new to the scene. Of course, you're good enough to be able to get on a team like NAP, so you've been playing for a bit here, but you haven't been on the most prestigious teams yet. You were just on Pro Dota recently, a fairly, up-and-coming team, but what has it been like grinding in Dota 2 to kind of make a name for yourself?
It's been a challenge, especially when you'd played Han for so long and you were very confident in yourself in Han and you felt like you knew most situations and you'd just seen it so many times before, to just starting something completely new. It was definitely a challenge, but I think you learn a lot about yourself, kind of going through the different stages that Dota, emotional states that Dota puts you through. The anger, the sadness, also the really happy times. You learn to understand yourself better, I guess, in some way. Yeah.
There is the fun parts to it too, as frustrating as it can be sometimes. So, what were there inspirations for you? Obviously, there's been a lot of these Han players that have made the transition, and most recently, Keizu has been a teammate and a player that you played against often within Han. What was he maybe an inspiration? Were there other people out there that were inspirations?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, every single person that you knew from Han and you played with frequently, it's inspiring to see them do well. But I think for both me and Keizu, when we saw Peter win TI that year, everyone was like, wow, Han players can actually do it. And then we were talking about it more and more. And then eventually he convinced me let's go to Dota, dude. We've done what we needed to do in Han.
That you have. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do in Dota 2 now. And again, you've already made a little bit of a splash here. Of course, you even qualified for the Kiev regional qualifiers, and I think that's definitely a success in itself. I mean, was that a proud moment for you to do that?
It was basically the last 3 months of working hard in Pro Dota and really going at our mistakes, trying to figure out what we were doing wrong and try to constantly get better. It showed that it at least to some degree paid off, just being able to qualify, and it felt really good that day. You were yeah, all right, let's do it, let's win the regional 2 now. But obviously we didn't, but it would have that was the atmosphere in our team afterwards, which was a really good feeling.
Now I want you to sell yourself here, iNsania, to the fans of NIP. Why should people be excited that iNsania is joining the roster?
Oh wow, this is hard. Wow, actually, I don't know what to say. I think for the first time...
You're a great support player.
that's a start, I guess. Yeah, I mean, if you like watching Rubik and Crystal Maiden, you should definitely be happy because you're probably gonna see a lot of those too.
What kind of on a side note, though, okay, so another take on this is that you're replacing Big Shoes. You're replacing Cinderin.
For sure, yeah.
This is a player that's been around forever, since the very beginning. He's a very well-known and liked player. Now, all of a sudden, this guy named Insania steps in and is taking his spot. That's got to be pressure, right? Like, so what is it like for you knowing that?
I mean, I respect Sind a lot, and ever since like the Han days, I've listened to him cast a lot of games, and it's like he's a player that I definitely can learn a lot from, like watching and like seeing what he's done. And I think replacing him, we kind of have like maybe different mentalities when it comes to Dota. He has like more old school mentality maybe, and I might have some like fresh views that might help the team in that way. And we're probably gonna like, we have been in the process of it, but we're like trying a lot of different playstyles right now and trying to figure out like what works for this team. And I think we kind of see it as like a new team, or at least I feel like they do. It's not the same team as before, and there's like different things that are going to work now. And that's kind of like what we're doing right now. So I don't know if necessarily I feel like pressured by like trying to do what Sin did, because I think that would have been hard for me to do. But I bring my own style, and I'm confident that I can do what I want to do well.
How did that process go, by the way? I meant to ask that even earlier. The idea that you're on NIP now, but how did that come up? Did they come to you? Was it an open tryout? What was the deal?
So this Christmas, actually, when I joined PD originally, I was in contact with Adrian, which is Era, and we were talking a bit, but they decided to go with Hani at that point, and that's when I joined Pro Dota. And then we didn't really talk too much over the course of the 3 months from that. But then later he approached me again after the regionals, and he was like, "Hey, I really wanted to talk to you. You didn't really get a chance to try out this Christmas, but I really want you to get a chance now. This is what's happening. And how do you feel about that?" And I was like, "Wow, that's really awesome." I had like completely put this behind myself. I didn't even think about it. So it came as like kind of like a surprise. And at the same time, I actually had the Han tournament. So I was like juggling 3 balls at the same time, like with Pro Dota, figuring out what's happening with NIP, and then at the same time, like the World Finals. So, and then yeah, basically, so I talked to Adrian a bit, and then we decided, I would have some time before we go to Thailand. I played maybe like 5-6 scrims with him, and then he told me he'd get back to me. So I left for Thailand, and then like I think after maybe 3 or 4 days, he wrote back to me and he was like, "Hey, would you want to try out more when you come back home?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be super cool."
Awesome.
And yeah, no, I gotta give a shout out to Pro Dota as well during this whole process, because they were really cool about it. I opened up and I was like, "Yo, this is what's happening," and they were really supportive and really cool about the entire situation. So they deserve a shout out.
So you've gotten to play with these guys now, at least in scrims, I assume, and practicing with them a little bit. No tournament matches yet, but how confident are you that you're fitting in, and how confident are you with this team moving forward?
I think right now it's, like you said, Sind was a big part of this team. He was their captain, and we still need to figure out a lot of this stuff. Like, what do we want to draft? How do we want to play? Like, what play style are we going with? So we still have a lot of things that we're trying to like slowly figure out and really like do it the right way. We're not trying to rush anything. We're trying to find our own like way to do things, and it's taking some time. But I think once we get through this process, you'll really be able to tell like how we can utilize each other to the best. But as a group, like outside of the game, I feel like I fit in really well. We have a lot of fun.
Do you think that, especially with you being newer to the game, a little less experience, including your teammates, especially, do you think 7.00 coming out was big for you? Were you happy to see that kind of like refreshed everything for everyone?
I didn't really think of it in that way until you like mentioned it now. But I guess, of course it is in some ways an advantage for us. But I also think in a weird way, it's also disadvantageous, because you know how since I haven't played the game for as long, you kind of gotta like relearn all the mechanics and like just get adapted to the way things look and the way things like interact with each other. Also having to relearn like a new map, because the Han and Dota map were previously very similar, is like even more on top of what you're already trying to learn. Whereas like a more experienced Dota player already knows like all the hero interactions, and for them it's just like a new map. All right, cool, nothing too big.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure. I didn't really think about it too much.
That is fair. Well, what would you have to say to somebody? Because there's a lot of these players out here that are these great players that maybe just don't get this quote unquote opportunity to be able to play for a team like NIP. I mean, you had to grind through the ranks yourself. There's players like Kazu, I know, as we've talked about earlier, that, had to do his own grind and eventually now ended up on Team Secret here with going to the Kiev Major and everything. What is your best advice that you have to anyone out there that maybe is looking to grind and get on a team?
I think if you want to grow as a player, like the most important thing is, that's the start, right? Like you got to make yourself grow as a player and improve. And really just focus on like how could you play better to make everyone on your team have a better game, not just yourself, which I think a really big issue that a lot of Dota players have is that they focus too much on how could they make their own game be better instead of how could they improve the team's game to be better. And I think that goes for all roles, whether you're a mid laner, a support player, or a core, but more importantly for a support than a lot of other roles where like sometimes it's better for you to focus, completely on warding and making sure that your team has like vision on lock. Whereas in other games, it's more valuable for you to get items because you're fighting more or whatever. And like realizing which one is better when, and like how you need to play in different situations for your team to have the best game. I think that's like what you want to focus on in order to improve.
Quick Fuzz, a great middle player. You're going to be playing with great players around you, but you're not going to be playing with Mickey on NIP. Are you going to be able to manage that, man?
I had a rough month in the beginning of Pro Dota without Mickey. We've been apart like on and off now for a bit. Who knows, dude? We'll find our way back to each other, I'm sure.
Eventually, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing where Mickey ends up. Is he kind of just doing his own thing with school? I mean, is he not really?
So he has a lot of things on his plate too, because he, like you said, he has school, and then he's kind of like reaching that. Like before, he was so young that Dota was his only interest, but now like other things are becoming interesting too, and he's kind of like caught in the middle of everything, like having time to practice, doing school, trying to have time for his hobbies and like other activities. So I'm not sure, but I think once he puts his mind to something, he really he's not gonna give up. He might take a bit of a break and reevaluate his time, but I think for sure he's gonna make a name for himself in Dota. Whether it's this specifically this season or if it takes a bit longer, I'm not sure, but I know he wants to play competitive Dota and get really good.
All right, well, back to you, iNsania. Again, a big congratulations being able to join such a prestigious esports organization, at least in NIP, and I was super excited to hear that, and I know a lot of those fans out there as well. So, do you know when your first tournament's going to be, by the way?
We're playing the Epicenter qualifier on Sunday.
Okay.
I believe. We have played some official games, but nothing too big, I don't think. But yeah, we're playing that on Sunday, so I think that's our next game.
All right. Well, best of luck in that. It'll be fun. It'll be exciting to see, obviously, the results from that and see how things are moving forward. So thanks again, iNsania, for joining me on the show here, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so obviously with all these roster changes going on right there, and fun to hear from iNsania, and obviously with his situation with NIP, but man, there's been so many other things already happening, and obviously speculations in terms of what could happen when it comes to some roster changes right here. So I figured we kind of just break it down here, not necessarily take too long to get the ins and outs of all these changes by any means, but if anything, kind of make you guys aware of everything that's going on, because like I said, as if you're any bit familiar, post major events and especially things like the TI happening, there's a lot of roster changes that take place. So going to do our part here on the show, and I'm sure throughout these next couple of weeks we'll have plenty to talk about with that. In fact, with that said, Valve did announce May 24th will be the official day to actually fill out your final roster when it comes to having your roster good to go that will be eligible for TI7. So anything after that, you are not allowed to make changes for when it comes down to moving things on your roster. And then even before that, there's actually the drop period, if I'm not mistaken, where, May 16th, actually. So, man, we are coming up here. That is less than 2 weeks away. That's the last day you're able to drop a player. After that, you then have to May 24th to then lock your official roster, have your 5-man roster. good to go right there. So with all of that said, there's already been some changes that have shaken things up. We mentioned last week a couple that took place. Of course, Seneko joining Na'Vi. We had iNsania joining NIP, of course. One that was actually just announced earlier this morning, and I know a lot of people were kind of curious who the new players were going to be. Team NP, the North American team. Team NP, of course, earlier on they announced the release of a couple of their players, 1437 as well as SVG. They've found replacement players as well as moving things around as a whole. Apparently, Pylai, the Pylai, he is now a part of NP. He's going to be their new 5-position player. That means, of course, yes, he left Secret, and now it's going to be interesting to see who Secret gets replaced with. Well, we already have that answer. Yapzor's actually replacing Pylai on Team Secret. So there's kind of a transaction happening right there. The 5th player, though, to join NP is Fata, actually, the former player of Bears, of course, and the success that they had shortly. But, I also brought up, I think I might have brought it up on the first show, or I've talked about this before, how I wasn't sure if Bears was 100% done just yet. I know there was this quote-unquote proof that I guess one of the players had mentioned in a chat, I think it was Forev, that he simply responded to the question, is Bears a thing anymore? And he said no in Twitch chat. I didn't necessarily take that as 100% evidence, but apparently it is, as of course a couple of players even, obviously with now Fata joining NP and Yapzor's joining Secret. So it is pretty much safe to say now that that was official and Bears is no longer. So there's that whole situation. But back to NP real quickly. Again, it's kind of interesting when it comes to this new team of theirs, because they're also switching up some roles a little bit. Eternal Envy is actually going back to his roots in a lot of ways of playing that 1 position now. Fata's actually taken over the mid role. He's a fantastic mid player. I got the chance to watch him on Bears quite a bit, when they were around, and he looked pretty damn good. So I think that's kind of a smart move right there. MSS is, of course, the 3 position. Aoi 2000, though, he's going back to his 4 position now. Of course, he played the 4 position back with Evil Geniuses back in the day. So it's kind of interesting seeing a player make that transition going from 1 to 4. But in the case of Aoi, he does have history there. And perhaps if he's going to take over a leadership role of sorts or continue that, I guess. I'm not exactly sure how that works on this team. But playing that support role could, of course, help with that idea a little bit more. And then Pylai set to be their 5 position. So that's a new NP roster. Again, on paper, it's one of those cases. It seems like it definitely has potential, bringing in some European presence right there. That's going to be interesting to see how it works out for them. And they got events coming up here soon that we're going to get an idea of what we're dealing with this team. So Team NP making that change there. Team Random, in case you haven't heard yet, this happened earlier in the week, pretty much right after the Kiev Major. There was an announcement made by the players, I believe it was, that Team Random, formerly Wings Gaming, of course, we already talked about that whole situation. They did officially announce that they are breaking up, and in fact, 4 of the 5 players are no longer going to even are actually retiring in the end from the competitive scene. So that was definitely very interesting to hear in terms of their situation. They apparently may not be fully retired, as anyone that follows the Chinese Dota 2 competitive scene especially. This has happened plenty of times before, where a player announces retirement and then all of a sudden they're back shortly later. There's a lot of speculation going around in terms of they're quote-unquote retired because of certain rules with the Chinese Dota scene, where they're being banned from certain events because of how things happen with Wings Gaming and that whole breakup there. Again, I'm not even going to try to get into that. It's frankly confusing / I who knows what to believe type situation. Something tells me it's not the last we've seen of all 5 of these players, in fact, though. So that's, I think, the biggest thing to take from it when it comes to former Wings Gaming and Team Random. But the other kind of big note on that, though, is that it'll be the first, I believe this is the case. I checked into this. Other people were saying it, so I'm going to go with it. I believe it's going to be the first international that we have not had a defending champion. Outside of the first one, of course. Goes without saying there. But it'll be the first TI, so TI7, that we've not had a defending champion to represent themselves. And you kind of think about what that means, that what they're passing up by disbanding right here. So it really is that much more interesting, the fact that they are choosing to disband it, because they had a free invite, right? They had a free invite to the upcoming international right here, being the defending champion. So something's definitely going on. But again, the idea that we've seen the last of these players, I just don't believe it. I don't think it's the case, and I'm sure we will be seeing them. Another big team that announced no changes, actually. So all you Evil Geniuses fans, Crit did make it official that there will be no changes. They plan to keep their 5-man roster with the roster lock coming up right here, going to TI7. So there you go. I can't say I'm surprised whatsoever at that. I know there's been people talking about the idea that maybe even replacing a player like Crit or Arteezy possibly, and it just, I just don't see that. I mean, EG as an organization especially, they seem like that organization that's going to keep a team together at least for a full cycle, right? Before they make dramatic changes with the roster. So I'm not surprised whatsoever to hear that announcement from Crit. So again, if you're an EG fan, you have that to be, well, I guess depending on who you are, whether or not you like it. But personally, I think it's a good move, and consistency is always going to, be nice to have. So there's a couple of other teams that are on the radar, I guess you could say. Now, we kind of went over it earlier. Team Liquid and Thunderbirds were two teams that very curious to see what they do. Another couple of teams that came to mind for me personally are actually Alliance and Digital Chaos. And again, these are some quote-unquote bigger name teams that I felt it's worth at least bringing up. Digital Chaos, one, because they're NA, and NA has a tendency to shift around quite a bit, and especially with players moving around in NA. In fact, the complexity situation as of recent, obviously with 747 and Monkeys Forever no longer being part of the team. Up until earlier today, we had NP not having two of their players. So it's just, there's players out there. I mean, SVG and 1437, in fact, are players that are out there. So it's going to be interesting to see if things do happen with a team like Digital Chaos, because it was a newly formed team to an extent. I mean, yes, they ultimately finished in the 9th, 16th spot. They did have signs of hope, though. They did look fairly good at the Kiev Major, in my opinion, the matches that I got to see of them. So I'm not suggesting that, again, they're absolutely going to be making changes, but they're one of those that I think we need to keep an eye on, and I would not be surprised if changes do happen within these next couple of weeks here. Alliance is another team on that list for me. Alliance, frankly, has had fairly disappointing results, and for an organization that's, has such prestigious history, I know it's unfair to expect this Alliance squad to, by any means, live up to the Alliance of back to TI3 or whatever it was. In fact, zzrock mentioning earlier how, that team not even losing a set for the longest time. I'm not saying it's fair to expect that, but the results have not really been coming up. They've been coming up short when it comes to qualifying for bigger events. It wouldn't surprise me if changes are made. Where those changes are going to be made, I think the safe players are no doubt Loda, EGM, and Limp, I think you can argue. However, when it comes to Hanskin and Jonas and Fan, as much as I love these guys and their history, and I don't think they need to be swapped out, I don't know if they're safe necessarily. Now, whether or not that is the case, again, this is just me kind of speaking from the perspective of what I feel in terms of the team and maybe some changes that need to be made to kind of bring in new blood and try something new. Because again, when it comes to their results, it just simply has not been that great. And then I'm actually noticing one last one right here. Not really a surprise, but Virtus Pro will not be making any changes. Apparently, just announced earlier today as well. VP, is anyone surprised at that? No. And you know what? Even though OG hasn't announced anything yet, I think it's safe to say they're not making changes. So there you go. That's the roster shuffle so far right now, though. Again, going to be interesting to see how things continue to move along here when it comes to the roster shuffle situation. But with that said, I think it's a good place to transition into our competitive surge now, what I like to call. And basically, we go over other news that it's happening in the competitive scene, pretty much just quickly go over it and get straight to the point. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do that. Sticking on roster changes, one more to actually announce here. Ajit and Afu of Warriors Gaming Unity, actually in the Southeast Asian region there, they are no longer part of the team. They are dropped from the team. There are no mentions on replacement players yet, but obviously an organization that's actually had some success. They were at the Boston Major and players that have been around for a while. So it could be some interesting shuffles going on in that region, a region that definitely is stepping up quite a bit. I mean, not only TNC and Faceless, but we even had a team, Clutch Gamers, qualify for the Summit 7 coming up as we announced last week. So event news with all of that said, the Dream League EU season kicked off earlier today, in fact. Teams actually get $1,000 for each win they get in each individual game, and then the top 3 teams at the end of the day actually get that invite spot to the DreamHack Atlanta, set to take place, I want to say in July, if I'm not mistaken. So, in fact, double checking that. Yeah, later on July. Right there, which is set to have a $175,000 prize pool. So you have Alliance, Team Liquid, Virtus Pro, Team Secret, Navi, Mouse Sports, Vega Squadron, and Team Empire, all battling out for those 3 of those 8 spots right there. In the NA division, not going to kick off just yet, but later on in the month, you got Complexity, Thunderbirds, Team NP, and Digital Chaos will be duking it out later on. So that's the Dream League kicking off. Always fun to see what they're doing there. We got Epicenter, the $500,000 land that's going to be coming up here in the near future. EG and Virtus Pro announced as the second and third teams to be invited, joining OG. There's going to be 3 more invites to come. So curious to see which those other 3 teams end up being, but those so far, again, no big surprises there. Summit 7 qualifiers are set to begin on Sunday, May 7th with China, Europe, and America. So the Summit 7 qualifiers, we've already had Southeast Asia as mentioned, but now we need to get the other regions and set up that event to officially take place. So looking forward to that one right there. Mr. Cat Invitational EU, there's a $50,000 tournament. It's covered by Join Dota, currently going on right now as well. And actually, some top teams from the European region in that one, including Team Secret, Virtus Pro, Empire, Spirit, Vega Squadron, Cloud9, Effect, Pro Dota Gaming, Comanche, and Ninjas in Pajamas. That has already taken place or started even, and it's a double elimination tournament. Again, a $50,000 prize pool on the line right there. Former ATN and Let's Do It team is now known as Team Singularity. And then the True Side episode, our next set of True Side episodes, going to debut on May 19th with OG and Virtus Pro from the grand finals there. Some behind the scenes action of the Kiev Major. I know a lot of people looking forward to that one, including myself. That's some hype right there. Again, that's set to release on May 19th. So, all right, that wraps up the competitive surge. And with all of that, I think that wraps up the show as a whole once again here today with the DotPro with myself, BreakyCPK. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this show yet again, and already looking forward to next week's show as the roster shuffle is going to continue. I'm sure we're going to have plenty to talk about when it comes to some new rosters and some events now taking place post the Kiev Major. So again, special shout out to all my guests that came on today, including zzrock and iNsania, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week here on the DotPro.